All right. Afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's having a great snack. There are cookies. There's still time to go get some. Not really going to get in the meat of anything right away, but my name is Hoerschelman. I work for the University of Iowa. Been working there for about 12 years. Started as a student. I also have a consultancy business that I started in 2002 called 460 Design. Have been getting more and more into Drupal ever since 09, coming to the point of being an evangelist, as you see me up here right now. Also am the chair of the Drupal users group for the University of Iowa and help run the Drupal Hawks Eastern Iowa users group with Jared, another guy who you've probably been to a presentation or two from today. One of the things that I've run into over the course of my exploration of Drupal has been how it relates to the missions of higher ed. In most cases, when you're just looking at a simple site, you run into the same things as a practical development process anywhere for anybody. Know your audience, know what you're trying to communicate, and know what you need technically. For higher ed, we get kind of specific in who we're getting after. You have diverse populations from faculty, staff, administrators, researchers, students, current and prospective, their parents, alumni, and then you have the sort of special cases of the public and the news and media. At the University of Iowa, we've been slowly getting into hitting more specific sections of this populace, mostly in the ways of for faculty and staff and administrators in training them on how to use it, and from the development perspective in how to target the specific audiences such as the prospective students and general public, as well as how to disseminate public relations materials towards the news and media. For the University of Iowa, one of the big things that has been done is the Iowa Now setup, which you can see at now.uiowa.edu, where it's become the de facto place to put out your press releases, because at this point enough people have been told about it and have used the email signups that they get daily email blasts, and by virtue of workflows and other modules that have been set up, we've gone through so that when someone submits a subject that they want to get disseminated out, it will go through the proper channels. It'll get sent to central communications, through legal if required, and all this stuff is documented, and so everyone knows that yes, someone has signed off on this is fine to push out, or no, we need to send this back down to them and have them make edits. So by virtue of add-on modules, we are able to do this type of thing in Drupal. Knowing our communicative needs. Of course, some of the these are fairly straightforward, of course, navigable content, pleasing aesthetic. Searchable, that becomes something for large institutions that becomes a bit of a drain. Shareable is something that's kind of new. We get into this whole social media sphere. How do you make it so that something is consumable by a lot of the different aggregators that are out there? Things like feeds, for one thing, are something that we're leveraging more and more, especially with things like Iowa Now, to get make it available for other people to consume and share on their own sites, or via Facebook and other things. Things like the Facebook like button, adding that in, Reddit if you're into that type of thing. Interactive, that's one thing it's a tough thing to do as far as return on investment, but the ability, it might not be so much on a Drupal page, but generally the responsiveness of your institution by social media, things like Twitter or Facebook, is becoming strangely important to a large, younger segment of the population. If you aren't up on your Twitter feed, they think that you're not doing anything important because attention spans are getting smaller and you have to fit what you're doing into 140 characters. In the same vein, mobile friendly. You have to be able to design for different screen sizes that have it look as you want it to and get the information across, regardless of it's this big or this big. Accessible is also one thing. You want to be able to get your content out to everybody, not just those that are, that have, or actually, let me rephrase. You want to be able to get that out to people who may need assistive technology to access your site, which this is a bit of a hard problem at present with legacy systems, but as we're going forward, things like HTML5 and the move towards mobile friendly is starting to push this in the right direction. Technical needs. What does a university want technically? Well, the biggest thing that almost every university wants is single sign-on. You want to be able to have somebody sign on with one ID so they don't have to remember 18 different IDs and passwords to get to the things around your institution. From a development standpoint, supportability is a very large thing. You don't want something that's going to become obsolete in a month or 2 years even, depending on what your design life cycle is. Performance, security, scalability, those are all, of course, things that are always in the front of people's minds when they were trying to put out something that can represent their institution. Recoverability, because things fail. Is the product that I want to use something that I can take that can take hits, and if the server goes down, can I quickly migrate over to another server and have things up in a short amount of time? Analytics is something that's more and more important all the time. Are people actually looking at this stuff? Why build it if they don't come? Customizable, integratable, sort of go hand in hand. Things like Blackboard. Everybody's using it. Nobody particularly likes it all that much, but they have to make it work with all these other things. Last item, which I will be delving into quite a bit here in a moment, is compliance. As federally and state-funded institutions, we are under obligation to follow certain sets of rules that normal people don't normally have to follow, or at least they should be shooting to follow, but they aren't required to by statute. So, all that said, these are things we're looking for. How does Drupal fit in? Well, from the free standpoint, everybody loves something that's very cheap. While it's free to own and open source, it comes as a CMS, as a platform. It's got a very large community, as you can see by all the people showing up here. It's extensible. It's customizable. Drupal 7 especially has become very mobile friendly with syntactic design in the moving towards HTML5. Services have become a larger part, which lends itself greatly to the use of Drupal as an application platform rather than just a front-facing website. Social integrations, there's more and more modules being developed that allow you to do things such as actually run your Facebook page from a Drupal install, do the share this button, which will allow you to throw it on to any number of different social aggregator sites such as Reddit, or I guess probably Dig is a little dated at this point. And there's large enterprise-style vendors like Acquia, Pantheon, and others that can do a lot of this work for you if you are not inclined to do it yourself. Another thing that's great about Drupal is that people are starting to get very pointed with what they can do to fit these niche markets of education. the examples here: Open Academy, which is designed to be an out-of-the-box courseware solution. You can download it. It's currently Drupal 6, but there's supposed to be a Drupal 7 install coming out within the next, I think, 6 months or so. And then Open Scholar is a setup for more towards the people end of things. It was designed at Yale, I believe, or was it Harvard? Harvard, yeah, that would be right there. Thankfully, no one's from Harvard and aren't going to give me any guff. Open Scholar was done at Harvard to get people's CVs and their courseware and publications, all in one place, all SEO optimized, so that the lead backs to their all the things that they were accomplishing could be organized and set up nicely in one place. Built on the Drupal platform, so you set it up once and you can just keep creating more people on top of this one platform. Open Atrium is designed more along the lines of an intranet site, so you can have communications inside of an institution. I've heard of other uses for it, but it's one of the ones that I haven't really gone too far into. And then there's Elms, which was designed by, I believe, Penn State to be a whole learning management system. They built it from the ground up, specifically designed much like Open Academy, but very particular to higher ed. Whereas Open Academy is just trying to have a course, they're trying to do learning management, higher education, and that's it. I believe it's also currently Drupal 6 as far as release, but has a Drupal 7 beta that's closed right now. Love Drupal, but it is not a magic bullet. There is the dreaded DLC, the Drupal learning curve. It is not something that you just pick up and run with. There is training involved for all these things. You will have to do some type of research or hire somebody to do it. It's also not a substitute for information architecture. You're going to have to know how to build the content yourself. You're going to have to know what it means to create engaging content for your users. Just because it's displayed, in a flashy website is not going to make it something that either is easily read by a person or, for that matter, a search engine. You're still going to run into bugs. The Drupal ecosystem is an evolving ecosystem, and so keeping current on patches and possibly investigating things on your own will be part of the life cycle that you engage in. File management in Drupal is kind of a sore spot. Even at Drupal 7, we're still working on what's the best way to handle these things. They're coming up with some really cool ideas like file entities. The media module is progressing into something that should end up to be what we need for file management inside of Drupal. Single sign-on, there are solutions, but they're not local to Drupal. Usually, you end up having to use secondary authentication systems that it can talk to. But normally, these are all evolving. For us at Iowa, we're using the Central Authentication Module CAS, built on top of a slightly tweaked PHP CAS installation. There was a look at Shibboleth, but the overhead on it for us was too high. But again, that's one of those, you have to weigh what it is that you're trying to do. If you're doing only internal to your institution, things like CAS work really well. But if you're trying to do something where you have multiple institutions coming together, you're going to want to look at something like Shibboleth, where it's the federated identity is handled at an even higher level than something like CAS. And then, of course, at the bottom of the list is regulatory compliance. What does Drupal do for us as far as getting things like accessibility and all that together. I'll go over that in a moment. So what do we do? Despite all that, Drupal's still a very good place to start with moving towards a centralized platform for your both website development and application development. As of about 3 months ago, Acronyms did a quick scan of the 3,600 plus EDU domains that it could find, and it reported that there was 30% of all these EDU domains had at least one Drupal install on it. So there's quite a bit of an adoption there. As far as adopting Drupal, what is first thing you got to look for? What are you using? As was said earlier by Chris, if you're a .NET shop, this is not going to be something that you're just going to pick up. You're going to have to start using PHP and learning that. If you're already using PHP, it's a great fit. If you're somewhere in between, if you're using some other content management system, you're going to have to look at what it's going to take to migrate. The other questions are the same ones that everyone has. What do you have for staff? What do you have for time? What do you have for money? Each of these is going to, if you have a lot of staff and they're willing to learn, this is going to be something that they're going to be able to pick up, and then they're going to be able to teach to other people. If you have a lot of money but not a lot of staff, you might want to look at somebody like Acquia or another contractor to do a lot of the work for you. And then I'd also say getting them to train you on what you can do with the system. And then, of course, if you have a lot of time, maybe you don't need staff or money. You can just sit down and do it all yourself. But normally, that's not how it all works. As far as other resources on why you should be using Drupal, one of the best ones I found is right here from the New York City camp. It was, I believe, Acquia and a gentleman from Tufts University went over what they went through together as they did end up partnering on making those decisions on choosing Drupal and moving forward. So, any general questions about what I've covered so far? Anything unclear? Okay, diving right into it. Regulatory compliance, everyone's favorite thing. Who here has to deal with one of these acronyms? Okay. Which one? 508. Okay, I was going to say, those 508 is the first one most people say. State, FERPA is another one. Anybody here dealing with HIPPA at all?
What's it stand for again?
Health Information Privacy and Portability Act. If you deal with patient data, PHI. Okay. So I'm going to go through these kind of quickly, except for pretty much the first one and the second one and the third one. So the I must do this first. Okay. So regulations add an atmosphere of uncertainty. That was a great quote I heard from a previous talk about regulatory compliance and just IT in general, where these are always shifting. So things get changed, especially on the state level, faster than many people are ready to implement them. Thankfully, I guess I lost my thought there. Anyway, getting back to it, as it says, large disclaimer, I am not a lawyer. I'm not giving you legal advice. If you have any specific questions as how this relates to your institution specifically, please ask your own general counsel, but I can give you generalizations until the end of the day. ADA 508, Americans with Disabilities Act and the Rehabilitation Act, Section 508. This is what you will just generally hear called accessibility and accessibility standards. There is a list, and I'll just quick pop through here. We won't hit every single one. List of things that, as a covered institution, which pretty much means if you're federal, and if federal or state funded, and then there's some leeway for things like land grant institutions that have different structural makeups. But for the most part, the idea behind it is you need to be able to, anyone that can go to your university, or even the general public, needs to be able to access your content. Much like the setups for the buildings, where we put in elevators and ramps for people in wheelchairs, we are now needing to put together things for people that use assistive technologies to read your content on your website and be able to come away with the same ideas that a sighted or someone with that. I don't want to say the word normal, but it's just someone without a disability would be able to glean from it. So like here, some of the easiest examples is text equivalent for every non-text element shall be provided. If you have an image, you add an alt tag. This seems like a simple thing to do, but you'd be surprised at the lack of this being done. It's one of the top things that needs to be done to a website to make it accessible. If you have an image button that doesn't have an alt tag, but it says click here to finish, a non-sighted person is not going to be able to see that. Tabbing through content. One of the big items is, let's see, I gotta find, let's see. Which one is it? I can't find the exact one. A web page needs to be able to be accessed by the keyboard only. If you can't go through your site and do everything that you would want someone to do only using the keyboard and tabs, your site is not accessible. The differentiation of color is another large thing for accessibility. Some of the things they say about like image maps, which hopefully we've moved past image maps, are still get transferred forward towards things like JavaScript loaded elements. If something comes in and there is no cue to an assistive technology that something new has been added to the page, the person will never see it. So there's lists of things out there for creating 508 compliance out here on this resources page, mostly dealing with this WCAG standard. I believe it's the federal government is looking to get to WCAG standard 2.0 AA as the requirement to be considered accessible. This entails almost everything on this list. So if you can't take your site to this level, it won't be considered accessible. For the most part, as this relates to Drupal, there are a few themes out there presently that get you on the right path. Things like alt text in your content, you're still going to have to train your users how to use. There's no magic bullet for that. But going towards like adaptive theme and Omega and some other HTML5 themes, the structure of those creates the syntax that things like screen readers and other assistive technology require. If it's a syntactically correct document, these will process them much better. And then as well, when you get into things like the ARIA standards, which was created to address some of the issues with things like JavaScript loading and other interactive elements that weren't around when they first drafted the WCAG standards. These allow things like landmarks to be placed so that the screen readers, by looking at these ARIA tags, can know I should watch this space for something to show up after the page is loaded. And so that helps to bring the rich content that most of us have come to understand, especially in things like responsive design, into the accessible sphere. There's other ones that, like this last one here, when a timed response is required, the user shall be alerted, given sufficient time to indicate more time is required. That's not my words, but there's many things that you wouldn't think are needed in getting to be an accessible site. Most people just think screen readers, but there's cognitive disability. There's like dyslexia, or color blindness is another one that you have to bring in. Usability testing is a one way that you can suss some of these things out before they become an issue. FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. This deals with personally identifiable information, which is pretty much anything that can tie a set of records back to an individual person, which for the most part, the protected stuff becomes things like Social Security number, credit card numbers, any of those other ID numbers that are non-specific to your institution. In some cases, however, within like respect to grades, even the ID number becomes part of something covered by FERPA. So, like we have university ID at the University of Iowa. If I put my university ID or a set of university IDs with grades next to them, that's a violation of FERPA if that's out on my website. So there's things like that I'm used to seeing in the past that now are explicitly forbidden from doing. One of the things you can do, though, is put out directory information. So there, name, address, phone number, email address, dates of attendance, degree awarded, enrollment status, and major field of study. That all is fine unless the student or parent revokes permission. So it's okay until they don't, which that is something, as far as things like Drupal is concerned, if you're storing any of this information, then you have to be aware somehow centrally of how your student has released their information. This is not something that I believe anyone has addressed yet as far as a module or anything like that. I believe it's pretty much handled by specific people at each university. So if there's anybody that has come up with some type of solution to this, I'd love to hear it. You have down here at the bottom, I have a link to the security checklist. What is it required specifically by FERPA for the protection of this information, as well as some just further good practices for protecting the PII. Since there's nobody really with hospital background in here, HIPAA won't be something I'll cover too greatly in. A lot of this ends up being sort of common sense type of stuff. Protected health information. Same idea as PII, but a little more nebulous, as there's much more things involved in what is considered protected health information. There's certain entities that can receive it without your permission, such as for billing purposes or for just your general care. You wouldn't want to have to tell every doctor that they have access to your information. But as far as a Drupal setup is concerned, there's some really interesting. If you're looking to make an application that has any type of protected health information in it, there's certain things that you just have to do, which most of it ends up being, don't share it with anybody that doesn't require it. If you're going to develop a system that runs through patient records, either just by connecting to a database and displaying it, as has been done inside of the university, you have to make sure it's protected by practical barriers and that no one else that doesn't need it can't get to it. So in this sense, if it's an intranet site, then that seems to make it okay. But at the same time, the people developing it may not have the business need to actually see the patient data. So to do so, what you end up having to do is mock up a database that looks like the patient database without actually ever using it. So there's you still have to, even when you're developing, you're supposed to keep that separation between the data and anyone who shouldn't be using it. There's privacy and security components, but for each of them, it ends up being you write down as much as you can. If there is somebody, if somebody is looking at it, who are they? Why are they looking at it? What are you doing to keep the data separated from people who might act for unauthorized access? Where is this data being shared? For what reason? There's a whole list of all this at the resources at the bottom. Not sure what time we got. Okay. But yeah, it's this and okay. Next item is PCI DSS. This is if you're taking credit cards, which more and more people doing e-commerce, this comes into play. It pretty much this standard is something done by the credit card companies. It's not actually a law. It's more just a standard from credit card companies for anyone who stores, transmits, or transacts a primary account number, which there's a great breakdown of this at this ProMet site, where again it's very common sense things. Don't share it with people who don't need it. If you encrypt it when possible, and their sort of short end of it was don't be dumb. Yeah, it's don't put it on a public site if you don't have to. If you've got you need to document all of your everything that you do. There's a whole list of audit rules that you need to take care of depending on what you're actually doing with the data. In a Drupal sense, when you're using something like Commerce and you're doing a full pass-through to like PayPal or Authorize.net or any of those merchants, you end up not really having to do anything except for writing down, we're passing this to them. You're taking it, but unless you're storing it, you're not really on the hook for much. But as soon as you start storing it, you're having to look at encryption. You're having to do your writing your policies for what happens if there's a data breach. You have to write a whole set of risk management things that you have to share with whatever your card holder is that you're dealing with. So some overhead to keep in mind if you're planning on taking any type of credit card payment. Some more regulations that end up possibly running into what we do in higher education. Graham-Leach-Billy, if it's one of those things. It's a bit tied to the PCI DSS thing in that it's basically financial information. If you're dealing with anybody's financial information, social security number, bank account numbers, anything like that, you're covered under this. And for universities, it ends up being covered because of FAFSA loans, because you have the person's personal information tied to their financial information. But if you are FERPA compliant, they carved out a niche that says if you're FERPA compliant, then you're also Graham-Leach-Billy compliant. So there's sort of a nice little thing there. ECPA, Electronic Communications Privacy Act. This is a bit of an interesting one where it just lays out the rules for what it is that you can monitor, which in our sense it would be in Drupal terms like what can you look at with your users, And it all depends. Is your user an employee? Are they faculty? Are they student? Each of these have, or is it the general public? Each of these has a different protection put on them according to this rule. Mostly, it draws a line from sort of student to everybody else, because students have FERPA protections, whereas employees technically they can you can have your mail read, and there's not much that you can do about it. Faculty can be a little different depending on if it's a faculty researcher. The public, whatever terms of service that they end up signing on for on your site, that's what they're covered under. Patriot Act ends up being part of this as it modifies some of these things for law enforcement. Next up is the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. This gets interesting when you think of things as like distance learning. Depending on how, what happens if someone basically does anything that could be considered hacking, and it's interstate, they could fall under this federal law because of you being a government or financial institution. There's actually been cases where they could have been brought, but wasn't brought, where someone changed their grades, but they happened to be using a computer in a different state. So, not only was it just fraud, but it would have been federal fraud. And the last final few. The TEACH Act and DMCA Act, Technology, Education, and Copyright Harmonization, such a great little name, basically says we'll back off of you if you do more copyright controls as an institution. And then the DMCA is you can't break any countermeasures of like DVD encryption or anything like that without being charged. So in education, there's fair use, but at the same time, there's still the argument about fair use. So TEACH was trying to bring this into some type of balance where copyright holders wouldn't get bent out of shape if you used their like movie or whatever inside of a classroom. The problem is that in order to make this happen, it ends up putting the burden on the institution to make sure that no one outside of the intended audience is able to access whatever copyrighted work. So again, like it turns into something where, like, say you have a setup on with Drupal where you have people that are sharing videos on your university site. If any of these videos are copyrighted, technically you could run afoul of either DMCA or TEACH because of the copyright infractions, and at that point, it's possible under some of these rules that you could end up becoming liable for the copyright breach. There's also to consider is Open Records and Freedom of Information Act. That becomes, how are you going to extract the information if it's requested from you? State laws. Iowa has a notification of breach on notification of breach on financial information, which again covers things like the universities. So if the university is broken into, they have to notify everybody that of a breach. And there's some more outlines of things that could possibly be on the docket listed in this Iowa Privacy Task Force document. This was a study put together by the Vilsack administration that ended up coming up with one of the things was this notification of breach law, as the federal level didn't have what they thought was strict enough reporting requirements. So all that said, I have a bunch of resources here at the bottom. This benefits of adopting Drupal for higher education is a really good one. It's put on by Acquia. Got some other understanding HIPAA. This And these last two are more just about general dealing with rules inside of higher ed and IT. So I'll try to answer any questions you may have. Still not a lawyer.
Are there any specific advantages or disadvantages that Drupal has for higher education compared to other CMSs that you can think of?
That I can think of, the push towards accessibility is the number one thing that I can bring up. It's been something that's been talked about for a while, but it's as with most software development, it's just been taking some time to get going. But with the advent of Drupal 7 and the syntactically correct markup, it's just been a huge jump towards it. But it's again, it's one of those things where it's down to the developers to keep, and the content creators to keep it that way. So until there's something that really pushes people to get mindful of things like accessibility on a grander scale, it's going to be back on the higher ed institutions to do it. But one of the things about Drupal is there's a large, like I said, a large community of people coming together on this. The people in this room, this is the type of things that you care about. If we sit and we get together and we talk and we identify exactly what is needed, there can be enough collaboration between all the different higher ed institutions that we can get these problems solved fairly quickly.
What was it you mentioned about the single sign-on in Drupal?
Single sign. So Drupal itself has a login system. It does via modules. You can set it up to use things like OpenAuth or OAuth, Shibboleth, CAS. But again, it's not Drupal itself that needs to manage these things. So it's like Drupal will not be your single sign-on solution. It will be something that can access a single sign-on solution. Yes?
I was just going to mention to you, I don't know if you've used Site Improve or heard of it, but it is something that you can actually purchase or pay for that will check your site for W3C standards and mark the pages as to what level they are, and it will also prioritize for you your top level pages before the rest. It's been really helpful for us to help follow the standards that you talked about, and it works just fine.
So it's called Site Improve?
Site Improve.
Okay. Yeah, our accessibility coordinator is using Compliance Sheriff as well as his own set of tools. I'd hoped to get him here to do his own presentation, but he was unable to make it. All right. Yes?
What kind of penalties would you face if one of these were violated?
Well, it depends greatly on each one. As far as accessibility goes, there's been a couple suits. I think notably it's Penn State right now that's going through it. They got sued over accessibility, and pretty much it wasn't about money to any single person. There wasn't like a fine. It was sued to get in compliance. With some of the other ones like FERPA and HIPPA, there are some massive fines, and it ranges on the setup or how large of a break with the rules it was. So I believe there's some sanctions that can be imposed over a period of time. There's also monetary fines, things of that nature. As far you have to get directly into the statute for what it means to you specifically.
Could like the termination of the website be a possibility, or is that kind of like?
Well, yeah, I mean, they would most likely have you take whatever. Like if there's something that's leaking data, they would of course make you take it down immediately. I'm sure. Yes, sir.
The decentralized nature of higher ed is always a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I've seen is that everybody wants their own website. So while certain entities like the College of the Arts and Sciences is certainly big enough to have its own website. You have people that maybe are on legacy platforms, or maybe you have some let's say biology departments on WordPress and they don't want to move. And if you give everybody what they want, the institution doesn't have the resources to meet those demands.
Right.
So how do you handle that and kind of play share with that? Who gets what?
Let's see. Got some central IT guys here. From our end of things, there's been a carrot and stick a little bit approach. They've been building a free service so that it's not something that anybody gets charged for, as long as you fit these certain criteria. And then if you need specific custom setups, then they get charged hourly. So and then from there, or if you just want to go at your own, they'll just rent you server space. So it's like creating those service tiers is one way that sort of gives them the flexibility. It's like, we'll do it for you, we'll do it if you pay us, or we'll just let you do it. But then if you get them all in one single spot, you can start to manage the tools that can help them and start training them the way that you want them to be trained. But it's just you have to get them to look at you first instead of wandering off on their own. And I know that's very difficult to say. We're still finding people that have been using Drupal inside of the university to this day. There's people inside the biomed engineering that apparently have made this great iPad app that all the people in ophthalmology are using, and I heard about it 2 weeks ago. So, and I've been running the Drupal group for the last 2 years. So, I mean, it's continual adoption, and I think you get into the carrot part of it, where you get people to show off what they're doing, or get an audit or something like that from you, and then you can start pitching them these type of things. But yeah, the communication of it is difficult to say the least. Plus, higher education politics between departments is never something that I would want anyone to wade into for thoroughly knowing what's going on. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.